Welcome. We're here for another conversation. We have a very fascinating guest, Kelly Hickey. Um, Kelly has an amazing job. She has a work that has a different name, special name as well. So maybe you could tell us about what you do and tell us about the name as well.
Okay, so I am an artist and a creative consultant and manager for Bundle, which is a Neighbors Together and Better Middlebury partnership initiative to bring people downtown during the rail and bridge construction and to use empty storefronts to try to get them filled with community, thereby serving the rest of the businesses in town. And hopefully get those storefronts rented to permanent tenants. Bundle comes from the African proverb, which is sticks in a bundle are unbreakable, and it's a Kenyan proverb, and I came up with the name when I saw all the sticks bundling at the bottom of the river, right outside on Main Street, and tossed it around, and that's how we came up with Bundle.
It's a nice name.
Thanks.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
It shows up in many different languages, and very much appreciated. So, have you done this for some time?
So I've been with Bundle, the Concept Bundle, and with Better Middlebury Partnership since December. In December, I met up with a friend, Claire Tebbs, who is a creative placemaker, and asked her if she knew of any empty storefronts downtown that we could host artist craft fairs during the holiday season. And she put me in touch with Karen DeGay from the Better Middlebury Partnership. And Karen was generous enough to welcome us into the clay space, which was being used for Midnight Stroll. There were two successful pop-ups that we had over the Midnight Strolls. And after that, Karen and I got back together in January with one of her board members. And from there, they suggested that maybe we try to do these pop-ups and bring that same energy back to Main Street during the rail and bridge construction. That was brought about because lots of the merchants were saying what a great evening it was and what a great idea it was. So since April, after we passed some zoning laws and some regulations put up by the select board, we opened April 4th in the old clay space at 51 Main. And since then we've had 30 events, and we have found a successful renter for the 51 Main Street spot, or I'm sorry, the 60 Main Street spot, and now we're moving to 51 Main Street, which was formerly Rough Cut.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so that starts today.
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 Hey, this
Yeah.
is celebration day.
It is. It's good.
And moving day.
It's moving day.
And part of moving for you is that you don't have a great deal
to move, right?
A great deal of things to move, right? Tell us a little bit
It's
about
true.
that.
So the idea of Bundle is that different people come in and be able to really pull off what they want to have in the space. So Bundle tries to streamline what they have. So we have a few tables and we have a few chairs, but really we want people who are coming in to do pop-ups or marketing, shopping and retail markets, to have their own look and to imagine themselves really being in this space. And because of that, we offer out a few things, but we really want them to bring their things in so that it has their flavor and they can see themselves as potential renters.
Does it pick up the whole enthusiasm of being creative, or does it scare some people?
I think we see a little bit of both. There's definitely some intrepidation, for people who are kind of going at this the first time. Can they move what they're doing into a retail situation? Is the square footage more than what they're used to? But I try to walk them through that. I'm an artist by trade. I'm a textile artist. and I work 23 weekends a month up at the Burlington City Artist Market.
Okay.
And so I know very well about like setup and takedown and how to have your aesthetic stand out but kind of blend in with the rest of the group. So I offer some expertise or some ideas as to how that can happen for people. But really it's their show. You know, I want to stand back and support them in what they want. I will help them with some of their marketing if marketing isn't something that is their forte. So, you know, making posters and flyers to put around town and to put in our windows, that type of thing. We try to keep the posters moving along in the windows, so there's usually 3 or 4 events posted for the month, and as the event happens, it comes down and the posters fill out the window. Yeah, and I try to keep those kind of aesthetically pleasing and kind of within the same line of graphics.
Now, back when you were in elementary school and you were doing these art projects, did you ever imagine yourself working as an artist?
Well, ironically, I went to parochial school and we did not have art.
Oh, you
so
didn't. But you had plaid skirts.
Yeah, we did have those. Yeah, so the art that I got was through home. I had a very creative aunt. I learned to sew from a neighbor when I was 10. My mother was a hairdresser when I was a little kid, so we always had fun and you know, creative things along with all of that. And yeah, I loved Barbies. I was always making clothing for my Barbies and things like that. But I loved the artistic element to life, but I was very limited by it in parochial school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you had an artistic family, an artistic community. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit, but maybe not so much. My dad is a stamp collector, and my dad
father did that.
Yeah, it's wonderful, right? My dad was a 7th and 8th grade geography teacher. So, but my dad is also a naturalist. He is a hunter. He's a waterfowl hunter, and always enjoyed that. So, the natural world was really big in our life. So, you know, seeing things like you know, ducks and geese coming home and the different layers to them and the textures of them was really important to me. As for my mom, she, you know, had a daycare, so that wasn't so much, you know, it was artistic in the way that, you know, teaching children maybe basic drawing or art, but yeah, I think the artistic came from more of the fun element. My family loved to dance.
They did.
They were big dancers, big swing dancers. They loved to dance the jitterbug.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
They encouraged us to play, and from playing, I think, is where I really fell in love with art.
That's
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
That is the key, isn't it?
It is. It truly
is. To be
is.
able to enjoy yourself and
Yeah.
and to enjoy the people with you. So did you do parties
As far as
in your house?
yeah. We grew up I grew up in Newark, Delaware, but it wasn't. I considered it home, you know, when I was with my friends, but my parents didn't consider it necessarily home. We always went home on Friday and Saturday nights to where they met and where they grew up, which was just 20 minutes down the road in Pennsylvania. And being there, it was always a party. You know, we would visit with friends and visit with family, and I'm from a huge Irish family, and so, I mean, life is a party. There was no element of like, we have to have a party. The party was continuous. So,
and life is always stories too. Do you remember stories being a part of your?
Oh my gosh, totally. I grew up with all 4 of my grandparents, and stories.
All 4.
Yeah, and stories were a huge part of our family. Just getting together on a Friday or Saturday night, and the telling. My grandparents both had large families, and you know, their brothers and sisters were there, so it was always hearing about you know, what life was like. Oh yeah, you know. Really Oxford, Pennsylvania, and you know, it's wonderful. Yeah,
that's really rich. You meet some folks who don't have that, and you know that life was too serious, not a great deal of fun, and
Yeah, we weren't lacking that way.
it carries over.
It does.
And in terms of your
Becomes part of the
expectations.
fabric of your life,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Yeah.
So, who was the best storyteller
In my family?
in your family?
Well, I think my grandfather was I think he's definitely the best, he was the best storyteller, but he had the ability to weave us all in. So
Okay.
that, that was the gift we were all given. So now it has passed down from generation to generation. I think there's very few people lacking who aren't good storytellers in our family.
That's great.
Yeah, it's part of my business. I have the textile design business that I have is Edie and Glow. And Edie was Edie Sedgwick, Andy Warhol's muse in the 1960s, who I greatly admired when I got to apparel design as my major in college. And then Glow is my mom, who had me in the 60s. And, I think when people see my name of my business when I'm out at my stall on Saturdays, that they often ask, where do Edie and Glow come from? And that's the first story. And then the fabrics that I'm using are 1960s and 70s vintage sheets. And because I'm using the sheets, oftentimes there's a nostalgic story told there by someone who looks at it and remembers seeing it at a camp or a beach or someplace in their past. And oftentimes my items are desirable because of that memory. And I'm also teaching people that things that we would consider waste or unwanted are actually filled with memories, and it's just remaking them and making them more for today. Yeah.
So, do you find that material available?
Oh, there's so much of it. So a couple of the different places that I purchase my fabrics are secondhand stores like the Goodwill and Salvation Army. I find that they're good sources. There are a lot of folks in a certain age group right now that are going into residential care, and as their families are cleaning out their homes and their attics, they're finding a lot of these. Or as beach homes and camps are being sold, there's storage bins full. And so I purchase a lot from families. My daughter was at school in London, and they have one street that's full of vintage, and one of the shops was full of bedding and linen, and that's how my business started.
So describe for me. I remember my sheets when I went camping. No one would want them, but so, how do you turn that into an artistic expression?
Well, sheets are like yardage of fabric, so and they're nice and wide. So I make sure that the sheets are of good quality. Usually I use just the top sheet because so often the bottom sheet is worn out. But the top sheet was like today, it's hardly ever used. But back in the 70s and 80s, we bought sheets as a set. Nowadays, you can buy them separately. So those top sheets are like new, and the yardage, I'll design a pattern and lay it out and cut it, make it into dresses and skirts and pants, just as you would regular yardage.
Is that right?
It blows people away. I know.
I'm just mystified with that. I think that's so incredible. That's so incredible. So you use the term pop-up. That's an interesting phrase. What is it? What is it meant for you?
So pop-ups.
How do people understand it?
Sure. So pop-ups are urgent style shopping experiences or events. So oftentimes they maybe last for a day or two, or maybe even as long as a week. At Bundle, our events only happen between 3 hours and 2 days at full length. But pop-up meaning that it's not mentioned until maybe 4 weeks before the event is actually happening. And then that sense of urgency drives people to the actual pop-up so that they don't miss out. So it happens that when a vendor comes in, they may have an hour or two pop up their items, and then when the event ends, they have another hour to break those items down and put them away, and then we're ready for the next event. So it literally is like a Jack in the Box. You see it for a minute, and then you don't.
Well, I like the idea of the amount of time you have to get ready, and then to have the event, and then the amount of time you have to clean it up so that...
Sure, and you just said that you like the amount of time to get ready. So, like, tell me how you got ready for the event that you had.
Interesting. We invited some people who have been in our storytelling group, and I sprung for pizza that night. You know, I said, "We got summer, and what would you like to do with storytelling?" And very quickly, we had some comments about railroads and tunnels and so forth. Not critical, but just sort of that apprehensiveness of what is this going to mean, and then that started by remembering what places used to be in the places that are now here. You know, like where was the grocery store, and where was the ice cream shop, and so forth. And within about 15 minutes, all of a sudden it was really clear that we should do a storytelling event, and someone gave it the title, and no one questioned the title. It was called Back in the Day, and we said we need to find a place, and some folks had been involved with you in terms of a pop-up event at Bundle, and so they made the contact, and we said we need the time, the place, and the location. Then we can figure out what to do, and then another piece that came. So then we started looking for the storytellers and recruiting them. Another piece that came along was one of our members decided it would be great to have. She got fascinated with displays, and so that began to take a shape and life of its own. And then it became clear.
And where did she get those display items?
She talked to the local institutions, the museum, Folk Life Center, the library. The library was a co-sponsor with our storytelling group for this event, and then they began to look at the possibility of having people make photocopies, so photocopies could go up, and then display items could come, and she worked real hard on that, and it was and the space was ideal because it had those cupolas for the women's dresses and everything, and all of that was just like a display case. It was designed for...
I think I remember even seeing the Sheldon Museum had a display there
They did.
during your event.
Sheldon Museum and the Folk Life Center.
Yeah.
And they had the big picture of downtown with the old railroad bridge. So what was not a story became a story, and became multiple stories in terms of the display.
And I love how those stories are being retold even. I recently saw on MCTV that was recorded.
That's
and
right.
So that you can see actually what your pop-up looked like in the course of 2 events,
That's
right?
You go to our website, mctv.org, or middleburycommunitytv.org, and it's right there. And you can look at one. It's in 2 parts. The first part was the earlier time, 3:30, hour and a half was good time, really a good time. And
It was.
Then that half hour to get the display set up, and then
Yeah.
the second one.
And what I love is that when you had your event, you did do it in 2 parts throughout one day, so that there was that break in the middle where lots of people could go and have dinner or grab something to eat quickly.
They did.
Some people came back to hear the second session, but then there were others who took it as time to, really go have a nice meal or go shopping, which was wonderful for Main Street and one of the goals of Bundle, right?
That's right. Some of the people who came to the first session, they wanted to get back for lunch at one of the residents, or dinner at one of the residents, and some they wanted to get back before dark. And then the people who came at 6, they were the folks that had to work that
Right,
day. And
right.
so there was a space for them. So
Yeah.
I was so glad you had these 2 possibilities back to back.
Yeah.
And,
It was a wonderful event, and I hope more people will see that the possibilities of Bundle are kind of limitless, that you can come in and offer anything. We have swing dancing that's going on this Friday from 7 to 9, and it's a basic crash course in swing dancing. Next week we have hand lettering workshop, which is fantastic. It's $20. It's accessible to lots of different people. I'm hoping some college students will come down for that. And then we'll have things like meetings for the big town plan that's going to be happening. We'll have Planapalooza. We'll have 4 days there drawing up plans for, what the town is thinking in October. I think that one's in November.
Sure.
So yeah, it's an exciting time, and hopefully we'll get 51 Main rented, and then we'll move on to the next empty spot. And I keep saying we, but it's really, it's me.
Well, it's you.
But it's
Yes,
the
that's
town.
right.
The town is what's bringing it, and I'm very excited about that. So I just really hold this space. The town makes the magic.
Yeah. Well, the people.
That's right.
The people really.
The people are the town.
Make a difference when they come, and when they see some possibilities. But they need folks like yourself who know how to make it happen.
Oh, thanks.
And how to
I think at this
how to create excitement.
Yeah, I think at this point in my life, I'm willing to take some risks, and so making it happen. I feel like sometimes I'm just doing this by the seat of my pants, but I'm also really I'm excited about what the possibilities are, and really trying to bash down that negative attitude about what's happening, and really see this as an opportunity to try some kind of wild ideas while we are having all of this mix-up, as far as the rail and bridge. It's a great time to practice something new and try something new.
And towns end up having some empty stores.
Yeah, always.
And usually what happens is, with towns have empty stores, people start to count them.
Yeah.
And they, there's 5 empty stores down the Main Street, or there's, and so all of a sudden it becomes a numbers game.
Right.
And we're not winning.
Right.
And the town is not what it used to be, and all those kinds of.
But that's just changing times. We'd be silly to think that the town hasn't been through this before. They've been through it many times in my history of being here 24 years. But that numbers game is kind of silly. We just need to kind of take stock in what we can do and make it happen, and just seize it as an opportunity.
So you really do invest yourself in a community then?
Well, I'm just learning how to invest myself in Middlebury. I am a urban kid. I grew up in a big town. I grew up at the University of Delaware. It was a big town. And then Baltimore City really grew me up. I moved there after college and raised my first daughter there. And I married my husband there, all of that, and kind of really figured out what, living in a city was like. And then I got here and really felt lost. And I still do feel lost a lot. So this is also my way of pulling myself out of isolation. I live out in Weybridge. Right. It's very dark in the winters. I'm a summer person. Right. So as much as I have a back and forth relationship with Middlebury, and if Middlebury was in the Mid-Atlantic or the South, I might love it a little more, but you know, I'm trying. One day at a time.
Well, it's really...
I have a tattoo on my arm that says begin again. I have to remind myself every day.
To begin again.
Begin again. Yeah. Just try to find the love in it.
That's a good way. Mm-hmm. How are we doing on time? Okay. I can't read the clock, so I guess my question for you is I don't know.
Well, Len, what is your how it sounds like you have a lot of energy from Middlebury too. Where does your love of Middlebury come from?
We lived in New Jersey.
Oh, you're a Mid-Atlantic kid too.
36 years in New Jersey. We got married in Brooklyn, where Ann was from, my wife. We went to honeymoon in Newport, Vermont, because she had been a music counselor, and she's a musician, and she was determined she was going to live in Vermont someday. And I knew that if I married this girl, I was going to have my honeymoon. We were going to have our honeymoon in Vermont. And so we have wanted to go back and forth. Yes, we're going to move here. No, we're not going to move. It'll never work. And we wanted to come to a college town because we had never done that in New Jersey. And so it came down to Middlebury and Bristol, and loved both of them. But my friend asked me one day, he said, if there's an event that you want to go to in Middlebury, and it's 15 miles one way and 15 miles back, and it's snowing, will you go? And I said, probably not. He said, if it's 5 minutes away, will you go? And I said, sure, we'll go. You got to be hardy in some degree if you're going to live in Vermont. So that's sort of what did it. And I find Middlebury an incredible town. Whenever we come home, we go to the main street so we can say to ourselves, this is our hometown.
Oh, that's lovely.
And so I'm involved with counseling service, and I'm a hospice volunteer at the hospital, and I'm on this board for the MCTV, and it's Addison County is just an amazing place for volunteers. There are 63 volunteer organizations in Addison County.
Wow, that's
impressive. And they're there because people want to commit themselves to community. So,
wow.
So I love this place.
You can tell.
Yeah, and it
permeates out of you.
Yes, it does, and but it's so good to know that there's these kind of gifts that are being used and cultivated. Is there anything that you've learned from this pop-up world of yours that you would like to share with people?
Yeah, I am just very blessed that the town has come out so strongly for it and brought so many great ideas to it. And I have met some incredible people that, even having lived here now 24 years, that I would have never known otherwise. And I grew up in a very multi-generational family. I raised my kids in a multi-generational world. And, some of their dearest friends are elders and young kids. And that is what, that's what I feel blessed with, is that Bundle is continuing that for me, is just making those relationships. I don't think I can ever call Middlebury my home, but my home, I think, is pretty transferable. I carry it with me wherever I
Sure.
am, but
Yeah.
it is wearing on me.
Good.
It's the gift.
And you are making a marvelous contribution.
Thank you.
I
Thanks.
think with that we will say
Okay.
we have had a good time
Awesome.
talking.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So folks, tune in to our conversations. Join us. Let us know. And we thank Kelly for today.
Thanks.